So good morning, everyone. Oops, I need to move that over. It bothers. All right, you guys. So let's do a quick review of like the end of scene 2 for Act 2, and then we're going to be moving on into Act 2, scene 3, which is one of the more, it's a little bit funny because, I mean, let's face it, scene 2 was very dark because they just went and killed a king off stage. So it's kind of rough. So who ultimately ended up killing Duncan? Only Macbeth. Yes. So it was only him. Lady Macbeth decided that she couldn't do it because supposedly he looked like her father. And she's like, oh, no, I can't kill my dad. And yet she was okay with going and bashing in her own baby's brains, but it's neither here nor there. Okay, whatever. So then he comes on out. He's having a rough time. She berates him. And then she realizes, oh no, he didn't leave the daggers in there with the guards and Duncan's body. And so she's like, you need to go back in there. And he's like, nope, not going to happen. So she goes back in there in order to go smear Duncan's blood on the guards. And I love it when she's like, if he do bleed, lady, is 10 pints of blood that's in a human body. Of course he's going to be bleeding. It's a bloodbath in there. It's disgusting. Ugh. And one thing I wanted to go and point out to you guys is at the bottom of page 6 and into the top of page 7, we had some really great imagery where Macbeth is really, really upset and he cannot believe that he just did this very selfish act. And he says that, let's see here. What hands are here? Ha, they pluck out mine eyes. Will all Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas in incarnate, making the green one red. So we have a lot of imagery in there. He's saying that if he goes and dips his hands into the oceans, it won't go and make his hands clean, but the severity of what he did will go and make all of the oceans in the entire world turn red. I mean, that's some really good imagery right there. That's just wow. And he realizes at that point that what he did was so intense and so great of a disservice to the world that he has now impacted the world in a very negative fashion. So then Lady Macbeth comes on back and she's like, look, we match. That's gross. And she's like, oh, ha, 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 it didn't impact me. But then they hear some knocking up on the door and she's like, oh crap, we have to get back into some clean clothes because let's face it, they both have blood on them now. And we have to go and pretend to be asleep and let's just go. Let's go. She's like, come on, Macbeth. A little water is just going to go and wash away all of this stuff. It's fine. But Macbeth can't move. He's just frozen in place. And so she's like shaking him. She's like, come on, let's go. And the last thing that he says then is to know my deed, 'twere best to words, I know them. To know my deed, 'twere best not know myself. And then he hears more knocking. He says, wake Duncan with thy knocking. I would thou couldst. And so he's like, oh man, you're gonna wake the dead with how much you're knocking. And he's like, maybe you'll be able to wake up Duncan. I wish you really could do that. Oh. So he's already regretting his actions. I guess he should have thought this through a little bit more. So that's where we are. Let's go ahead and dive on into scene 3. And this is supposed to be a little bit more entertaining. And we get a porter. Question. So that's the imagery. That's where he's dipping his hands into the ocean, and it's turning the sea from green to red. So good question there. All right, so scene 3, we're now at like the front entrance of the Macbeth castle, and we get to meet the porter. So we're still in the castle at Inverness. It's early morning, someone's at the door, and we have a drunken porter, and a porter is a doorkeeper. He enters to go and open the door, and this is meant for comic relief because of how dark the previous scene was. So sit back and enjoy this. He's an entertaining guy, let me tell you. He is entertaining. So here we go.
Act 2, Scene 3. The entrance of Macbeth's castle. A drunken porter enters and crosses over to the giant doors.
Here's a knocking indeed. If a man were porter of Hell Gate, he should have old turning the key. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there in the name of Beelzebub? Here's a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty. Come in time, have napkins enough about you. Here you'll sweat for it.
Let me go and explain that. So the porter is imagining himself as the doorman in hell. He's like, who's coming this early in the morning to knock upon the gates of hell? Now, this is a little bit ironic simply because Lady Macbeth just called for this in the previous scene. And so Beelzebub is going to be a devil who's just like below Satan in hell. And the porter is imagining that the person who's knocking is a farmer who hoarded grain in anticipation of higher prices, but then he hanged himself when the crops turned out to be plentiful and he couldn't make like a lot of money from that. So the napkins in and out means that handkerchiefs were enough to like wipe up their sweat in hell. And so he's definitely a little inebriated there. So that's our first one that he imagines could be waiting on the other side. It's a farmer who hanged himself, who was hoarding grain because he was trying to make like a quick buck, but he failed at that.
Knock, knock. Who's there in the other devil's name? Faith, here's an equivocator that could swear in both the scales against either scale, who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven. Oh, come in, equivocator.
All right, our second person that he's imagining is this one is a directed right towards King James the First. Remember that is this entire play was written for him after the original one he didn't like, and he gave Shakespeare a very short time frame to go and rewrite it, or he would die. So after the gunpowder plot, and you guys remember learning a little bit about the gunpowder plot, Jesuit priests were questioned, and they're bound to tell the truth. So like that is their oath that they take. They cannot lie. But because they equivocated, and equivocate means to keep silent. So they chose to not talk. They were tortured and then killed for not telling who was behind like the gunpowder plot. So for King James, he obviously would think that the people who would not go and try to like help him, because I mean the gunpowder plot was pretty intense. That was where people were trying to take over the government. They went and put like all of this gunpowder underneath where everyone met, and the plan was to go and blow everyone up, like everyone in the government. So think about like in today's world, like when we have the State of the Union address, like pretty much almost everyone is there. They always keep like a couple people behind just in case. But the reason that they go and keep a couple people behind just in case is probably inspired by this gunpowder plot, is because it's a really bad idea to go and have absolutely everyone who is in power all in one building that could be taken out pretty easily. That wouldn't be good. So second one is the equivocator.
Knock, knock, knock. Who's there? Faith, here's an English tailor come hither for stealing out of a French hose. Come in, tailor. Here you may roast your goose. Knock, knock.
One. At the porter's imagined gate is an English tailor who went and stole some French designs. So an English tailor who stole French designs. So it'd be like, I don't know, like who's a really good designer in today's world? I'm not that person who knows. Anyone have anyone? Like I have no clue right now. I'm totally drawing a blank. Okay, so like back in the early 2000s, like Louis Vuitton was like the thing. Everybody wanted like those, no offense to Louis Vuitton or anything, but those ugly purses, like they were god awful ugly. I'm sorry, but they were. And so everyone was like trying to do knockoffs of that, and then people were buying those because the originals were so expensive. And I don't know, like I didn't buy it because let's face it, I'm cheap. Um, but that'd be like the equivalent of it. And now let's see what else he has to say because he's an entertaining fellow.
Never at quiet. What are you? But this place is too cold for hell. I'll devil porter it no further. I had thought to have let in some of all professions that go the primrose way to the everlasting bonfire. Anon, I pray you remember the porter.
So this last one is he's like, I had thought to have let in some of all professions that go the primrose way to the everlasting bonfire. He's like, man, it's just way too easy because it's so easy to sin. Every profession's going to be behind that door waiting to get in because let's face it, it's super easy to go and be a sinful person and it's so attractive to do so. And so now we get to see who is actually waiting. And we get two new characters. Characters are named Macduff and Lennox. Yes, we have a lot of Macs in there. That's pretty common for Scotland.
He opens the heavy gates, and Macduff and Lennox enter.
Was it so late, friend, ere you went to bed, that you lie so late?
Faith, sir, we were carousing till the second cock. And drink, sir, is a great provoker of three things.
What three things does drink especially provoke?
Marry, sir, nose painting, sleep, and urine. Lechery, sir, it provokes and unprovokes. It provokes the desire, but it takes away the performance. Therefore, much drink may be said to be an equivocator with lechery. It makes him and it mars him. It sets him on and it takes him off. It persuades him and disheartens him, makes him stand to and not stand to. In conclusion, equivocates him in a sleep and giving him the lie, leaves him.
Okay, so he's like, Macduff comes in, he's like, dude, what took you so long? We've been standing out here for like an hour. What are you doing? And he's like, well, we're kind of up drinking a little late. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm here, aren't I? He's like, true. And he's like, you can't blame me. You gotta blame the alcohol because it provokes three things. I always imagine that he still knows his like numbers on his hands. So, and Macduff's like, oh, okay, yeah. What three things? Please tell me. That sounds entertaining. Have you ever talked to a drunk person? It can be really kind of entertaining to mess with them if they're like the nice drunks, of course. Not if they're the mean drunks. You want to stay away from them. Just in general, stay away from drunks. Okay. So he's like, well, I'm so glad you asked. He's like, the three things that makes it happen when a person drinks. One, it makes a person's nose red. True. He's like, and it makes them sleepy. / it also makes them like want to procreate with others. However, it impacts the, what does he say? It takes away the performance. And it also makes them incontinent, meaning that they soil themselves like with urine. He's like, a drunk person wants to go and engage in sexual activity, but you know what? They're just unable to perform. So what you gonna do? Macduff and Lennox have just come in. Like, this is the first conversation. I don't know how well I would handle this. I just be like, you know what? I'm leaving. Bye. I'd be really uncomfortable. I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm just going to leave. Bye. Let's see what he has to say.
I believe drink gave thee the lie last night.
That it did, sir, in the very throat of me. But I requited him for his lie, and I think, being too strong for him, though he took up my legs sometime, yet I made a shift to cast him.
So Macduff's like, I think you've had a little too much to drink and you are really oversharing right now, and I'm uncomfortable. I don't know Macduff, but I like him already because yes. And the porter's like, yeah, you're right. Yep, you're right. He's like, but you know what? Ultimately, I was able to win because he urinated. Such a strange conversation. Let's see, why are they there?
Is thy master stirring?
Macbeth enters. He is wearing a dressing gown, trying to look like he's been woken from a deep sleep.
Our knocking has awaked him. Here he comes.
Good morrow, noble sir.
Good morrow, both.
Is the king stirring, worthy Thane?
Not yet.
He did command me to call timely on him. I've almost slipped the hour.
I'll bring you to him.
I know this is a joyful trouble to you, but yet 'tis one.
The labour we delight in physics pain.
Macbeth now leads Macduff and Lennox to the chamber King Duncan is in.
This is the door.
I'll make so bold to call, for 'tis my limited service.
Macduff enters the chamber, leaving Macbeth and Lennox outside.
I mean, technically, Macbeth has not lied. Technically. No, he hasn't awakened yet because he can't. He's dead. And he's like, here's the door. I shall lead you here. Here it is. And he's like, okay, well, I'll go on in and wake him up. So Macbeth leads Macduff to Duncan's door and then lets him go in alone, knowing what's behind that door. Now watch how Macbeth like words all of his stuff. It's pretty good. Let me tell you, it's pretty good.
Goes the king hence today?
He does. He did appoint, so.
The night has been unruly. Where we lay, our chimneys were blown down, and, as they say, lamentings heard i' the air. Strange screams of death, and prophesying with accents terrible of dire combustion and confused events new hatched to the woeful time. The obscure bird clamoured the livelong night. Some say the earth was feverous and did shake.
'Twas a rough night.
My young
I'm gonna cut in there real quick. So Lennox is like, did you guys have some really weird weather? Because we had like some really weird weather. He's like, so where we were staying, like the storms were so strong that it blew down the chimneys. He's like, and it was really kind of scary because like the air was just like full of screams and owls shrieking. He's like, I didn't get a good night's sleep. It was just kind of strange. He's like, and even there was an earthquake. She's like, I don't know about you, but that was kind of rough. And Macbeth's like, yeah, I also had a rough night. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yeah, but Duncan had the worst night ever. Oh, poor Duncan. Oh, yeah. I feel really bad right now for Macduff. Like, can you imagine? Poor Macduff. I just want to give him a hug. Poor guy. Let's see what happens.
young remembrance cannot parallel a fellow to it.
Macduff emerges from the bedchamber that he now knows to be a murder room.
Oh, horror, horror, horror! Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee.
What's the matter?
Confusion now hath made his masterpiece. Most sacrilegious murder hath broke ope the Lord's anointed temple, and stole thence the life of the building.
What did you say? The life?
Mean you his majesty?
Approach the chamber, and destroy your sight with a new gorgon. Do not bid me speak. See, and then speak yourselves.
Poor Macduff. I feel so bad for him. So he's just like, oh my God, you don't know what's going on in there. And they're like, what? Especially Macbeth. He's like, what happened? What? Is there something amiss? I have no clue. Like, what's going on? And Macduff is just like, OMG, the Lord's anointed temple and stole thence the life of the building. So the anointed temple means God's representative, because remember that they believed that a king was king because it was like God's representative on earth, and that was their divine right of why they became king. And Macbeth's just like, I don't understand the words that are coming out of your mouth. I have no clue. He's just a little overdramatic. And Lennox is just like, wait, what? Are you talking about the king? Like, what? And then Macduff says, approach the chamber and destroy your sight with a new Gorgon. So that is going to be a mythological monster whose gaze turned an onlooker into stone. He's like, if you see this, you are going to just be frozen on sight because it's such a horrible, horrible sight. Oh, poor Duncan. Poor Macduff.
Macbeth and Lennox go in to see the body of Duncan. Macduff rouses the rest of the castle guests.
Awake! Awake! Ring the alarm bell! Murder and treason! Banquo and Donalbain! Malcolm, awake! Shake off this downy sleep, death's counterfeit, and look on death itself. Up, up, and see the great doom's image. Malcolm! Banquo! As from your graves rise up and walk like sprites to countenance this horror.
So we have sleep and death are kind of linked right here. And so Macduff believes that it must be doomsday and that the death of Duncan signals death for everyone. Because remember, he was a very popular king. But I like that line or the lines that say, shake off this downy sleep, death's counterfeit. He's like, that's sleep is like a fake death, I guess. And look on death itself. Oh. And then, as from your graves, rise up and walk like sprites to countenance this horror. And now, our favorite lady, Lady Macbeth, is going to come on in. Let's see how well she deals with this.
Lady Macbeth enters, also in a dressing gown, trying to look as if she's just woken up.
What's the business that such a hideous trumpet calls to parley the sleepers of the house? Speak! Speak!
Oh, gentle lady, 'tis not for you to hear what I can speak. The repetition in a woman's ear would murder as it fell.
Enter Banquo, still dressing, as he comes in.
Oh, Banquo, Banquo, our royal master's murdered.
Woe! Alas! What, in our house?
Too cruel anywhere. Dear Duff, I prithee contradict thyself and say it is not so.
She sounded a little over. It's not to be bad, but it's a little overkill. Too soon. Too soon. Yeah. Yeah. Why have you woken me from my very deep beauty sleep? What is wrong? And Macduff's like, oh, I can't tell a lady. It's just too bad. You wouldn't be able to handle it because of your fragile emotions, and you're a woman. And then he sees Banquo coming. He's like, Banquo, the king's dead. And Lady Macbeth's like, oh my goodness, alas, in my wonderful home, I have no. Like, come on. Let's see what else happens.
Macbeth and Lennox return from viewing Duncan's body.
Had I but died an hour before this chance, I had lived a blessed time. For from this instant, there's nothing serious in mortality. All is but toys. Renown and grace is dead. The wine of life is drawn, and the mere lees is left this vault to brag of.
He's also going a little too intense here. And he's like, oh, if I had just died an hour before my king, life would have been so much better. Well, yeah, if you had died an hour before Duncan died, because Duncan wouldn't be dead, he'd still be alive, you murderer. And so he's kind of like telling the truth a little bit. And he's like, oh, if I had died and not killed Duncan, his life would have been blessed. But you know what? Now he's done it, and he's definitely not blessed. And so he's now at the bottom of the barrel of despair. What is that from Ron Burgundy and Anchorman? He's in a glass case of emotion or something like that. That's That is Macbeth right now. He is in this glass case of emotion. And now Duncan's 2 sons are going to come in and they have to learn that their dad is dead.
Malcolm and Donalbain rush in now.
What is amiss?
You are, and do not note. The spring, the head, the fountain of your blood is stopped. The very source of it is stopped.
Your royal father's murdered.
Oh, by whom?
So Donalbain comes on and he's like, what is wrong? What is up with all of this? And he's like, Macbeth's just like, you're what's wrong. And you don't even know it. Macbeth, calm down. You're going it's just too much, way too much. And so Macduff's just kind of like, yeah, your dad was just murdered. Like, sorry, dude. Sorry about him over there too. Like, sorry about all that.
Those of his chamber, as it seemed, had done it. Their hands and faces were all badged with blood. So were their daggers, which unwiped we found upon their pillows. They stared and were distracted. No man's life was to be trusted with them.
Oh, yet I do repent me of my fury that I did kill them.
Wait, what did Macbeth do when he was in there? What's his last 2 lines? What did he just do to the guards when he was in there seeing Duncan's body for the first time? He has just now murdered 3 people in the span of a few hours. He killed the guards. Yeah. He just completely killed 3 innocent people. Oh my. So let's back up a little bit. Let's see what Lennox had to say. And he's like, okay, so it looks like the guards did it because they were just completely covered in blood. He's like, their daggers were there. They hadn't even wiped off the blood. Like, he's like, they weren't even trying to hide it. And they were pretending that they were really out of it. So he completely believes the scene that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth set up. But then Macbeth's just like, oh, I was so upset that I killed them. While Lennox was like off looking at the body, Macbeth goes and kills the guards. Macbeth's going into serial killer mode here. Like, wow. Wow. That it's just it's a bit much. So let's see how the rest of the Thanes react to that news. So much for innocent until proven guilty, right?
Therefore did you so?
Who can be wise, amazed, temperate, and furious, loyal and neutral in a moment? No man. The expedition of my violent love outrun the pause of reason. Here lay Duncan, his silver skin laced with his golden blood, and his gushed stabs looked like a breach in nature for ruin's wasteful entrance. There, the murderers, steeped in the colour of their trade, their daggers unmannily breached with gore. Who could refrain that had a heart to love, and in that heart courage to make love known?
Oh, help me hence. Oh.
Lady Macbeth faints.
Looked.
Or does she? Let's look at what Macbeth said in response to Macduff's question of, why the heck would you do that? We kind of needed to question them. Why did you go and kill the guards? And Macbeth is going a little over the top here. He's like, well, I just loved my king so much that any noble person would have gone and killed the man that had killed our king. There lay Duncan, his glorious, I don't want to say body, but like self, but he's all stabby stabbed, and he's like, Any noble, loyal servant would have gone and murdered the people who did this to him. Right. Yeah, like what would have happened like if the guards had woken up and been like, we didn't do this. I mean, obviously a lot of people wouldn't believe them, but still, it's like it's just a little bit much. And then Lady Macbeth's just all like, help me, Hansel, and then she faints. Let's look at the character of Lady Macbeth. Does she have it in her to faint? Or is she just is she trying to take like some of the, I don't know, like some of the attention off of Macbeth? Because Macbeth is kind of spiraling here. Let's face it, he's spiraling. So is she so horrified by these 2/3 killings? Oh, slash was a really bad word to use right there. Sorry. Pun was not intended there. Or did she do it to draw attention away from Macbeth? What do you guys think? Most likely, yeah, it was just to go and draw the attention away. Like, she's not going to be all just like, I'm so overcome. She was just going and dipping her hands into Duncan's cooling blood and wiping it all over these guards. Let's see what else happens.
To the lady. Why do we hold our tongues that most may claim this argument for ours? What should be spoken here? Where our fate, hid in an auger hole, may rush and seize us? Let's away! Our tears are not yet brewed, nor our strong sorrow upon the foot of motion.
Look to
So Malcolm and Donalbain kind of like go off. Remember, these are the sons. They haven't even seen their poor dead father. And they're just like, this is going to look bad for us. Like, even though we were just sleeping, this is going to like look really bad. He's like, and it's just a little too convenient that these guards who've been guarding our dad forever just all up and all of a sudden killed him. Like, this doesn't make sense. Obviously, like if they did it, they had to have been like paid off. So they don't believe this. They're just like, something's a little strange here. And so they're like, we need to like leave now because we could be next. Now, who specifically could be next? Because he's supposed to be the next king. Malcolm, yeah, especially Malcolm. Malcolm has to leave like immediately. But if they leave, what's it going to look like? That they were the ones that did it, or that hired the guards to go and kill their dad. Let's see what happens next.
to the lady.
Lady Macbeth is helped back to her room.
And when we have our naked frailties hid that suffer in exposure, let us meet and question this most bloody piece of work to know it further. Fears and scruples shake us. In the great hand of God I stand, and thence against the undivulged pretence I fight of treasonous malice.
And so do I.
So all.
So Banquo was just like, okay, let's take Lady Macbeth on out because she's not handling it well. Yes, she's a heap. So that's not good. So let's go take Lady Macbeth on out. So a couple of them do that. And he's like, okay. We're still in like our pajamas. And also, by the way, back in this time period, people didn't wear like what we would consider pajamas, like with pants. No, usually it was like a long nightgown. So you have all these dudes just standing around in nightgowns. And he was like, all right, let's get some pants on first. Let's get dressed. So in that way we don't feel as awkward because this is a little drafty. It would probably be comfortable, but also like think about like how exposed you'd feel too. You have your king there, he's dead. Like I wouldn't like to, it's not like in today's world where people just go on out in whatever, in their pajamas on off to Walmart. No, it was, you had to like be presentable. No offense to Walmart, or if you go and wear pajamas out, none of that, okay? No offense. But they're just feeling a little uncomfortable. They want to put on their clothes that will make them feel a little bit better. Like we always have those clothes that just, I don't know, make us feel good. And this is not it. And so they're like, So everybody go take like 10 minutes, go get dressed, brush your teeth maybe. Well, yeah, anyway. Then let's come on back together. Let's discuss what needs to be done. Let's get to the bottom of this and let's stop any threat. So Banquo's really taking the lead here. Good job, Banquo. Oh, very good. That is now going to become a hit on Banquo because he is now becoming the leader. Oh no. So now Macbeth is not going to like this. And now, he has Duncan out of the way. But he wouldn't hurt his best friend, would he? It's his best friend. He did ask Banquo for help, and now Banquo kind of knows the truth, or it's going to be very suspicious. So, uh-oh, now we have 2 marks against Banquo. Oh, no. Let's see what happens.
Let's briefly put on manly readiness and meet in the hall together.
Well consented.
All leave, except Malcolm and Donalbain.
What will you do? Let's not consult with them. To show an unfelt sorrow is an office which the false man does easy. I'll to England.
To Ireland I. Our separated fortune shall keep us both the safer. Where we are, there's daggers in men's smiles. The near in blood, the nearer bloody.
This murderous shaft that's shot hath not yet lighted. And our safest way is to avoid the aim. Therefore to horse. And let us not be dainty of leave-taking, but shift away. There's warrant in that theft, which steals itself when there's no mercy left.
So if you remember, yesterday in the Macbeth realm, Malcolm was declared king. And now his father's dead the next day. So immediately people are going to be like, oh, it's Malcolm who paid the guards in order to do this. And then, of course, guilt by association, Donalbain too. So they realize, crap, this isn't good. And Malcolm is just like, I think one Thane is faking his sorrow. And Donalbain agrees. So Malcolm decides that they both decide that they're going to run away. And Malcolm decides he's going to run away to England, and Donalbain is going to go to Ireland. So that way they're safe, and they're split up. So that way they're even safer. So if one goes, at least there's one that has survived. And he's like, Malcolm says, I really don't think that the murderer has been caught. I don't think it was the guards at all. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He's like, it's a lot safer to go away. Aww, that's so sad. Now, scene 4.
Act 2, Scene 4. On the land outside of Macbeth's castle are Ross and an old man. It is during the day, but the sky is strangely dark.
"60 I can remember well, within the volume of which time I have seen hours dreadful and things strange. But this sore night hath trifled former knowings."
Ah, good father, thou seest the heavens as troubled with man's act threatens his bloody stage. By the clock 'tis day, and yet dark night strangles the travelling lamp. Is't night's predominance, or the day's shame that darkness does the face of earth entomb when living light should kiss it?
'Tis unnatural, even like the deed that's done. On Tuesday last, a falcon, towering in her pride of place, was by a mousing owl hawked at and killed.
And Duncan's horses, a thing most strange and certain, beauteous and swift, the minions of their race, turned wild in nature, broke their stalls, flung out, contending against obedience, as they would make war with mankind.
'Tis said they eat each other.
They did so. to the amazement of mine eyes that did look upon't.
Macduff joins them from the direction of Macbeth's castle.
Here comes the good Macduff.
All right, let's see what all has happened. So ever since Duncan has died, there has now been an eclipse, and it's lasting for quite a while. So they're standing outside, and it's in the middle of the day, but it looks like it is like super dark out still. So we have that pathetic fallacy and the pathos going on there too, again. So the natural nature has been disturbed. So a mousing owl, so an owl, destroyed a falcon. And if you look at like the symbolism there, that would be that Macbeth went and killed Duncan. And then Duncan's horses broke out of their stalls and went crazy and ate each other. Like horses don't do that. Like I'm not a horse person, but I'm pretty sure horses don't do that. So things are just going super wrong in nature as well as on for humans. Oh, it's not very good. So it's just creepy. It shouldn't be working out this way. And now Macduff comes on in.
How goes the world, sir, now?
Why, see you not?
Is't known who did this? More than bloody deed?
Those that Macbeth hath slain.
Alas the day! What good could they pretend?
They were suborned. Malcolm and Donalbain, the king's two sons, are stolen away and fled, which puts upon them suspicion of the deed.
They believe the Macbeth story. So everyone believes that the guards were hired by Malcolm and Donalbain to kill their dad. They're like, well, they're the ones that ran away, so obviously it was them. And that's the story that everybody knows. Oh.
It's nature still. Thriftless ambition that will raven up thine own life's means. Then 'tis most like the sovereignty will fall upon Macbeth.
He is already named and gone to Scone to be invested.
Where is Duncan's body?
Carried to Combe Kiln, the sacred storehouse of his predecessors, and guardian of their bones.
Will you to Scone?
No, cousin. I'll to Fife.
So Ross is like, wow, that is just so terrible that sons would kill their father. Like that goes against nature. What is wrong with them? And he's like, well, who's going to become king then? If Malcolm, who was supposed to become the next king, who's now a murderer, or branded a murderer, is gone. And so the kingship will now fall to Macbeth. I mean, it can't be anyone else since Malcolm and Donalbain are now gone, and Macbeth defeated Sweno. And the Vikings, he is the natural choice. So now the witch's prophecy is going to come true. He is going to become king. So all the Thanes voted, as they should have in the beginning, and made Macbeth king. And Macduff is not happy because he thinks Macbeth is the murderer. Macduff, you're a smart fellow. And so he's already gone to become king, and Duncan's body is going to Colmkill, and that's a small island off of Scotland's coast, and kings were buried there. So he's going to be buried with the other Scottish kings, and then Scone is going to be where the coronation is going to take place. Now, Macduff is the Thane of Fife, so he's not going to the coronation, and instead he's going home. And that's probably not the smartest choice, because what happens when somebody doesn't do exactly what Macbeth wants? They die. Oh, and so, but I mean, Macduff doesn't want to go and see Macbeth crowned because he thinks he's a murderer. So, I mean, I get it. I get it. Let's see what else happens.
Well, I will thither.
Well, may you see things well done there. Adieu. Lest our old robes sit easier than our new.
Farewell, father.
God's benison go with you, and with those that would make good of bad, and friends of foes.
The scene ends, and now some weeks pass before Act 3.
And that is the end of Act 2. So we had a lot happen in this. Whew. How else can it get any worse? We'll have to read on to find out.